Hi everyone, this is Megzable69 with Take the Red Pill. We are going to continue on with the video series, but there's something I just thought about that I just thought I would mention. I understand having notes, so that way you can kind of keep yourself on track and you know, just go in a logical manner of when you're talking about something. But when you're using fallacies like generalization and straw man fallacies, just the way this guy, this theist, Lamont Matt, was using, then I don't know, do you really need notes? Because the thing is, he's trying to prove his case throughout this whole debate. He's trying to prove his case for why is it that Christianity is a reality, or the reality of Christianity. And what he's doing is using, like I said, a lot of fallacies, just misinformation, misdirection, so that way he can prove his point, but yet anyone who is intelligent enough to just sit back and sit on the outside and looking in can see so many fallacies with what he is saying. So anyway, just thought I'd bring that up, and you can continue looking for the fallacies and just different things he says, which I will be pointing out. So in the meantime, enjoy the show, and here we go.
Thank you for that, Jason. It strikes me as funny that Jason doesn't seem to want to be in heaven, he doesn't want to be on earth, and he doesn't want to be in hell.
No, actually, you know, since Jason Testament is over here on earth, I think he's already come to reality with that and come to grip with it. I think it's the concept of him being in hell or being in heaven. Well, how can you want to or not want to be somewhere that doesn't exist?
There was a lot of things that Jason said, just going out there with just absolutely everything. So let me address some of the contradictions that I see.
Well, you are right. Jason did say a lot of things that you never did address. He asked a lot of questions that you never did address, not one of them. However, the contradiction, well, just because he does not agree with what is it that you believe in, that doesn't precisely make it a contradiction in what he said.
He accuses Christians of using the God of the gaps hypothesis. The God of the gaps hypothesis is basically saying we're positing God where science doesn't have an answer yet. Things like the creation of the universe, science doesn't know, so we just posit God there. Or the creation of intellect, our consciousness, science doesn't have an answer for that, so we just posit God there. That's actually incorrect. The Bible said those things prior to the rise of contemporary science. So it's actually science finding gaps where the Bible has had them for thousands of years.
No, not exactly. God of the gaps, all it is because you don't know something, you turn around and say automatically, oh, it's gotta be God. It's no different than like thousands or hundreds of years ago when people had no explanation for why is it that there was lightning. What did they say? Oh, it's gotta be God. Well, what do we find today? It's not God. So no, the Bible did not claim these things before science did. Sorry. Nice try.
He said our minds are attached to physicality. That's absolutely wrong. The mind has been a scientific blunder for a long, long time. Our brains are attached to physicality, but our minds are undiscoverable. If brain surgeons and neurologists scan your brain, they still won't discover your mind. He said stay away from people who claim to have found the answer, but yet he's doing a Q&A after this. He's answering questions after this. He claims to have found the answer to what you're going to ask him, but he says stay away from those people.
Okay, are we seeing a pattern yet of the nonsensical issues that this guy's bringing up? I mean, our brains and minds are linked together. Our brains is physically in our head, and our mind is linked to it. Our mind is what makes us think. Or how we think. So it hasn't been elusive to doctors like he states. Second of all, the Q&A that Jason Testament wants to do after this, so what? He's using a straw man fallacy again because he stated that Jason, you know, claims to have the answers. Well, no, he didn't. They both actually had a Q&A session after that where both of them were available to answer questions. So anybody who wanted to ask any questions, they were available for that. So, again, straw man fallacy, and he's pulling strings big time.
He gave 0 scriptural references in his first speech. He said God tells people to eat their babies. Where? He says, God says, blessed is the man who crushes his baby's head. Where? He gives no scriptural reference for this. I actually teach the Bible on Sunday nights. I'd be impressed if you found those scriptures.
Oh, okay. So he teaches Bible on Sundays, and he said he'd be impressed if somebody found it or Jason found it. Oh, that's interesting. Because he kept saying, you know, they're in there. Where? Where? Let me tell you. Leviticus 26, verse 29. You shall eat the flesh of your sons, and you shall eat the flesh of your daughters. And also Deuteronomy 28, verse 53. And you shall eat the fruit of your womb, the flesh of your sons and daughters, whom the Lord your God has given you, in the siege and in the distress with which your enemies shall distress you. Where? It's in there. Oh, and by the way, for the thing of dashing the babies against the rocks, Psalms 137, verse 9. Blessed shall be he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rocks. So, either two things. He's purposely using the fallacy of cherry picking and purposely not giving that information out, or for somebody who reads the Bible and teaches it on top of it, he apparently doesn't know it. Which one is it?
He said that Christians argue about everything. I can name 3 atheists for you: Brad Pitt, Buddha, and Joseph Stalin. They argue about everything too. It's not like atheists are this conformed group of people who agree on everything. By the way, Brad Pitt, Buddha, and Joseph Stalin fit very comfortably under the umbrella of atheism. It accepts absolutely everything.
So there goes the fallacy again of generalization and obviously not knowing what he's talking about to say atheism accepts everything. Atheism does not accept Christianity or any type of theism for that matter. It rejects it. It says you don't have any proof, therefore we do not accept your claim. And that's all it is. There's nothing more to it, so there's no accepting anything. Where's this guy getting his information?
So at least there's things that Christianity rejects. But to move further, he said God is evil, but he still hasn't defined the term. He hasn't told us what evil is. I gave him my definition. I said evil is the violation of purpose. But atheists don't believe that there's purpose to the universe. So how can they claim that we're doing these evil things when they don't believe in purpose? I still challenge Jason, just like I have been over the phone for several months, to give me a definition of the word evil before he applies that word to God or anything else.
I mean, come on, really? You don't have to believe in a God or you do not have to be of a spiritual nature to understand when something is evil or when it's not evil. And as for what proof is there that God is evil? I mean, come on. All the children that he killed, I gave examples yesterday in my last video. He had Saul go in there and kill innocent babies. I mean, if that's not evil, and somebody thinks that that is kind and benevolent, wow.
He said, I didn't say no God exists. I said a good God doesn't exist. Is that atheism? He's willing to posit that a God exists as long as the God isn't good because of the atrocities in the world? Doesn't make any sense. He said we can't rely on our brains because they're flawed, so we have to use science. Well, you use science with the flawed brain, so that's not a response. He said, why appeal to the supernatural? Why just use the natural? Because science tells us that the natural didn't always exist. So we have to use the supernatural in order to explain the natural.
No. You do not have to use the supernatural to explain the natural. That is right there, the God of the gaps theory. Bottom line, it's an argument of ignorance. Just because you don't know something, you have to say, okay, it has to be some supernatural force. I mean, it's a little arrogant at the same time to turn around and not be able to say, we don't know yet, which is the actual correct answer.
What Einstein discovered with his theory of relativity is that matter and time depend on one another. He was invited to the house of Edwin Hubble and discovered redshift, that the universe was actually expanding. And what that meant, and it troubled Einstein too, what it meant is that if we reverse time, theoretically, we get to a point where the universe or space-time didn't exist. Stephen Hawking figured this out mathematically in the 1970s. He said there was a point at which there was zero spatial volume. That means there's no room for nature to exist. So you can't say naturalism is the cause for the universe, because naturalism is finite. We have to say something other than nature caused nature to exist. That's the Kalam cosmological argument.
Yes, you're right. That is the Kalam cosmological argument. But it's patently absurd to turn around and not be able to say we don't know yet.
He says that, let me see, that the six-day creation is outside of science. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss because I'm studying what's called time dilation. The Earth is, well, they say the universe is 15 billion years old, I'm sorry. But that's not exactly true. The universe is 15 billion years old according to our time-space coordinates. According to where we are in the universe, we see that. But what Einstein discovered is that time and space curve depending on where you are. So, for instance, a minute on the moon goes faster than a minute on the Earth. A minute on the sun goes slower than a minute on the Earth, because time depends on gravity and it acts differently depending on your celestial body. So when God, and here's Gerald Schroeder's hypothesis, I advise everyone to look this up. Gerald Schroeder, he's a physicist, he works at NASA from time to time. He said, according to P.G.E. Peebles, who's an astrophysicist, the expansion ratio of the universe is 1 billion squared, or 1 trillion, right? So if you take 15 billion, which is the age of the universe, and divide that by 1 trillion, you get 0.015, which is exactly 6 days. It depends on where you are. It's about time dilation. It's about understanding that 6 days can go by faster on a small singularity than it will on an Earth in a galaxy this size.
So he said he's studying all this. So great. Where is his data to provide this evidence that he just spoke about? I mean, because all I just saw was an assertion from authority. One person turned around and said this, and so he claims it to be the truth. But then again, this is no different than what I would expect from any theist, or any Christian for that matter. They sit there and they look at the book, and the book called the Bible, and say, oh yeah, it's 100% truth, and they just totally disregard or can't seem to see the inaccuracies, the fallacies, and the contradictions in there. Oh well.
Let me see. There was so much stuff to talk about. Another thing is slavery. Let's talk about that. He's asking me to talk about where slavery is from a biblical perspective. When the Bible talks about slavery, it's not talking about the slavery that we see in American history. Typically, a Hebrew person would sell themselves into slavery in order to pay off a debt. So it would be similar to me coming up to a person and saying, look, you're rich, I need you to pay off my debt, and when you pay off my debt, I'll work for you and I'll serve you for this amount of years. And that's typically how slavery was. The Bible actually refers to sin as a slave master, and in the Old Testament it says if anyone takes a man from his family and sells them, then he's worthy of death. Another thing is, let me see.
Well, I'm glad that the slavery issue in the Bible is one of the things that he loves to talk about, because he got it wrong. You see, let me read to you 2 verses in the Bible, because he said that slavery is when, you had a debt, so you came to a person and said, hey, I'll work for you so I can pay off this debt. And I'll work for you for free for so many years so I can pay off the debt. That's not being a slave. That's working something off. It's no different than, for example, someone coming up to you and they work for you. Yeah, you pay them money, but that's how their debt is being paid. You're paying them money. But let me read to you these 2 verses. Exodus 21 verse 2. When you buy a Hebrew slave, doesn't seem like the person is coming to you. You buy them. That's taking them out of from their free will. He shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. Okay, let's look at another one. Exodus 21 verse 20 to 21 says, if a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished. But he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or 2, since the slave is his property. So, number 1, we just established that the slave is his property. And since when is it morally correct that somebody is your own that another human being can be your property. But second of all, let me see. If the person, after you beat the daylights out of them, gets up within a day or two, you're not to be punished. So what if they get up a day or two, barely straggling, and then they die 3 days later? Are you still going to be not liable? Like, come on. There are other examples in the Bible that could be shown where a slave can be given to the children because, again, it's your property. I mean, there are many examples about slavery. So, like I said, he doesn't read his Bible much, and he definitely got it wrong.
There was so much stuff to go over. He talked about the accuracy of the Bible. How much time do I have? A minute and 10 seconds. He said that the Bible is inaccurate. And he's talking about what are called textual variances. He said that there's 400,000 textual variances in the Bible, but there's only 120,000 words in the New Testament, right? And there's 400,000 scriptural changes. That seems devastating until you realize that 99% of those textual variances are word corrections. They're spelling corrections, or spelling errors. The Bible was translated over 1,600 years. We have so many Old Testament and New Testament manuscripts that if you stack them, they would reach a mile into the air. That's better than any textual document of antiquity.
Okay, so here's the first question then. If the Bible is supposedly God's inerrant word without inaccuracies, totally 100% correct, why would there be mistakes which had to be corrected all the time? Now, here's the second thing. The corrections that had to be made were not grammatical mistakes in any way. Because here's the thing. I'll give you a couple examples off the top of my head. If you look at first chapter of Matthew and the third chapter of Luke, of Jesus' genealogy, right? You'll see that it goes from Jesus to Joseph and then branches off two different directions, two different names, right? And that's not all. When you count the amount of generations, it's different. Now here's the thing. My father is my father, his father is his father, and so forth up the line. That is not something that could be debated. It's a fact, unless DNA proves otherwise. It's a fact. It's not a matter of opinion or belief. Yet, inaccuracies. Exactly, like I said, two different lists. You look at the Bible and go to the crucifixion itself. 3 different versions. You got Jesus, his last words saying, my God, why has that forsaken me? You got another one where he says, it is finished. Another one, Father, into thy hands I commend thy spirit. Which one is it? And there are many others. There are many other inaccuracies. Let me give you something. I just gave you the New Testament. Let me give you something in the Old Testament. Abraham was told to go sacrifice his son up on the mountain, Isaac. Now, not once but twice in that chapter, God says, go sacrifice your only son. The funny thing about it is, Abraham had a son 13 years prior to that named Ishmael. So guess what? Isaac was not his only son. Like I said, there's so many inaccuracies. So the Bible being rewritten because of language, or not language, but verbal and grammatical errors. Hokey. It wasn't. The whole book is a big old fairy tale.
To let you know, we don't have any more manuscripts of Socrates. Caesar's Galactic Wars, we have less than 100. Aristotle, we have 0 Aristotle. We have to look at Plato's manuscripts to see what Aristotle was talking about. We're getting so low on Caesar's manuscripts that they're looking at biblical manuscripts to account for Caesar, because the Bible talks about Caesar. So to say that
that's telling a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so like I stated previously, with all the inaccuracies that's in the Bible, and him disputing so many things, clearly he may have stated that he did state that he reads his Bible because he teaches it, but clearly he hasn't really read it. Either that, or he's just purposely ignoring the bad parts of the fallacies and inaccuracies in it, just so he can make it look like it's a great book. It's a great story, alright. But here's the thing. Again, we've seen so many fallacies. The cherry-picking fallacy, generalization, straw man fallacy. this is a pattern that you're going to see throughout the whole debate that this guy presented. One thing I guess is if you're going to present your views, make sure at least some information is accurate. You know, to give people Mickey Mouse stories, and that doesn't cut it. Anyway, we will continue this on with another another video. So for now, hopefully you swallowed some information from here and got something. And we shall see you next time. This is Megzable69 with Take the Red Pill.